And today I'm going to talk about, guess what? The Civil War. I know you're probably asking, what can you say about the Civil War that hasn't already been said? And in honesty, I don't know. But we are now currently celebrating the 160th anniversary of the war. And it still captivates the imagination of not only people in this country, but also in Europe. A few years ago, when I was living in Belgium, I happened to run across a Civil War reenactment festival with reenactors from Belgium, France, and Germany, all dressed up in appropriate Civil War uniforms. And later on, was visiting my friend in Germany, and we drove by a house, and it was flying the Confederate flag in their front yard. So a lot of people have interest in it. On YouTube, there's numerous YouTube channels just devoted to the Civil War. And I think many YouTube history channels have had at least one or more episode about the Civil War. One history channel just does the Bonnie Blue flag, and they have received over 1 million views. Can you imagine? I mean, it's just a song. People think about the Civil War, they're usually thinking about the great battles fought in the East, Sharpsburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, or they think about the campaigns of the Western Theater, Grant's drive to Vicksburg, or Sherman's march to Atlanta and beyond. But there's another element of the Civil War which most people don't know about. It's called the Trans-Mississippi. Yes, that area on the other side of the Mississippi. Now, people think about fighting in Arkansas, Missouri, but what they don't realize or know is that there was fighting beyond that, beyond the state of Texas, in what is now New Mexico and Arizona. And that is going to be the focus of the next several videos I plan on doing. Texas seceded on February the 1st, 1861. General David Twiggs was the commander of the Department of Texas. Shortly after Texas seceded, a delegation met with him and demanded he surrender all federal installations, property, supplies, and soldiers to the Confederacy, which he promptly did. With the beginning of the Civil War, the United States government began to withdraw many of its forces from its western forts, particularly those in New Mexico. In New Mexico, events moved rapidly. Confederate sympathizers in the southern half of the New Mexico Territory met at Mesilla, New Mexico, in March and adopted a territorial constitution and sent representatives to Richmond seeking to become a Confederate territory of Arizona. At the same time, pro-Southerners established a presence in Tucson and raised a force of about 100 men and marched east to Mesilla. Major Henry H. Sibley, the commander of Fort Union, New Mexico Territory, resigned from the U.S. Army and in early July met with Confederate President Jefferson Davis. Sibley presented to Davis an audacious plan. He would recruit a military force in San Antonio, Texas, and march into southern New Mexico. From there, he would follow the Rio Grande River north, connect with the Santa Fe Trail. At Santa Fe, he would seize federal forts along the way and proceed north and capture the Colorado goldfields. Davis liked the idea, but informed Sibley the Confederacy could not give him any men, money, or supplies. All Sibley would get was a brigadier general's commission. Sibley was confident he could pull off the grandiose plan. He would recruit an army with volunteers from Texas and New Mexico. That army would live off the supplies from the captured federal forts along his line of march. Last, the federal troops in New Mexico, what few there were disorganized and in poor morale. As Sibley headed from Richmond to San Antonio to build his army, events in New Mexico seemed to be proving him correct. Command of all the federal troops in the New Mexico Territory was in the hands of Colonel Edward R.S. Canby. Canby understood the principle of supply and the vast barren wilderness that was New Mexico. Without supplies, an army in New Mexico was going nowhere. Canby ordered all the garrisons to be prepared to abandon their forts, taking what supplies they could and destroy the rest. The garrisons were to be consolidated at Fort Craig in the south and Fort Union in the north. One of these forts was Fort Fillmore, located across the Rio Grande from Mesilla, in the heart of the Southern Territory. The Confederate leaders in Mesilla appealed to Texans for help. Help came from the 2nd Texas Mounted Volunteers under the command of Lieutenant Colonel John Baylor. In mid-July, Baylor occupied Fort Bliss along with all of its supplies. With his 256 men, he proceeded north to engage the 700-man garrison at Fort Fillmore. Fort Fillmore was commanded by Major Isaac Lindy, who marched out of the fort with half of his garrison to confront the Texans. The First Battle of Mesilla was fought on July 25, 1861. The battle was a Union fiasco. Major Lindy briefly bombarded the Confederate position with his howitzers to no effect. He then ordered an infantry charge, which was repulsed. Next, he sent in the cavalry, which was also repulsed. Lindsay then retreated into the fort. Even though he outnumbered the Confederates 2-1, Major Lindy feared an attack and prepared to abandon the fort. After his men filled their canteens with the whiskey and made a half-hearted attempt to destroy supplies, Lindy fled northeast to Fort Staunton. The next day, he surrendered his strung-out, demoralized, and dehydrated command at San Augustine Pass. Baylor patrolled the Union soldiers because he did not have the means to feed or guard them, and sent them to Fort Craig. A few of the Union troops did make it to Fort Staunton. After hearing of Lindy's defeat and the surrender, the Fort Staunton commander abandoned the fort and retreated to Santa Fe. Baylor sent a small force to Fort Staunton, where they collected all the supplies, skirmished with Apache and Kiowa, and returned to Mesilla. On August the 1st, Baylor created the Confederate Territory of Arizona, appointing himself as governor. In the meantime, Federal troops in western New Mexico, modern Arizona, abandoned the forts there. They successfully bypassed the Confederate force Baylor had sent to intercept them and joined Canby in Fort Craig. Despite outnumbering the Confederates 10-1, Canby took no action against them. Rather, he stayed in Fort Craig, which was under virtual siege. Confederate and Federal troops skirmished with each other in the area between Mesilla and Fort Craig for the rest of the year. Meanwhile, Sibley was in San Antonio attempting to recruit, supply, and transport his army to New Mexico. By the end of 1861, Sibley and his 3,200-man Army of New Mexico was at Mesilla. Outnumbered, short on supplies and ammunition, Sibley prepared to march his army north and attack Fort Craig. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to know what happens to the Confederate Army of New Mexico, be sure to like and subscribe.